Hi folks, Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on how to paint Vex Machinator, the Lord Discordant. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to my pal Jamie, who's dispatched some paints to me today. Really appreciate that, pal, so thanks very much. And let's get on with painting the figure. So the first colour that we're using on this one is Vallejo Black Red. This is just going to be to do the shawl on his hood. Now you might notice that it's looking a little bit shiny as I'm applying it. Now the problem here is I haven't used this colour for ages and it's separated quite a bit. So when I've put it on there, it's looking a little bit thin and a little bit shiny when it dries. So as the video goes on, you may notice that this becomes more matte and doesn't shine as much, and that's because I've mixed it properly and reapplied this layer. When we come back, we'll have this finished. Next colour is going to be Citadel Liberator Gold. This is going to be to do all his armour trim and some of the details on his blade. You want to be trying to get a nice even coat of this one when you're putting it on. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Retributor armour. This is just to do some of the smaller details. So the Chaos Star on his arm there, with the Eye of Horus, and then also you've got the little Chaos badge on his shawl there, and the one hanging from the chains. There are a few other little details that you can do with this too. Mainly use this one just to add another little bit of gold, but so that it's slightly different from the rest of his armour, so it makes it stand out a little bit more. The next colour that we're going to do is Citadel Leadbelcher. This is going to be to do all the silvery metallics. Now as usual, this is the darker metallic that I'm using for the silvery metal parts, just because, well, the Chaos, I want them to look a little bit darker than their Loyalist counterparts. I'm using quite an old brush to paint these parts and to do a lot of the base colours, mainly because you can be a lot more slapdash with the base colours. You just want to get that paint on there for the initial layer. Now we're going to move on to Vallejo Flesh Base. Now this is just to paint the skin around the targeting eye, just above him, and also you can see his eyes through the mask that he's wearing on his face. So you just want to get these little bits covered with the flesh base, or whatever flesh colour that you're using. And we can crack on with the next colour. Next up, we're going to use Vallejo White. This is just going to be to do his faceplate and also the eye on his shoulder. Or rather, the targeting eye, I should say. Now we're going to be using Citadel Fulgurite Copper. This is just to do the very tip of this mechanical arm. Next up we have Citadel Rakarth Flesh, which is going to be to do all of the bone on the model, so the skulls on his trophy spikes. There's also part of the skull on his leg too, and then the odd little claw growing from his armour. You try and get quite a smooth layer of this. It does help later on when you've got a nice smooth bone colour to them. Doesn't matter too much, but looks nicer, I think. Next up is Citadel Mephiston Red. We're just going to use that to do the tassel of hair hanging from his chain glaive. This ties him in with the rest of the troops that have been painted for the Black Legion. So they've got the red loincloth. If they've got a top knot or any tufts of hair on them too, they're also been painted with Mephiston Red to start. That's just the colour that carries on over them across the whole army. Now we're going to use a little bit of Averland Sunset, and that's going to be to paint all the wires. There's a couple on his backpack, one on the side of his head, I think one on his chain glaive too. Yeah, there we go. So we're just going to paint all of these yellow. Like so. Next up is Vallejo Burnt Umber. I'm going to use this as a base colour for all the leather. So you've got the coating of his staff, you've got the reins for the Hellstalker, and also you've got the trophy spikes at the back, which I'm painting as a wooden kind of colour. Now we're going to use some Vallejo German Grey, and this is going to be to do the back banner. Well, the reason I'm using Vallejo German Grey to start is because it'll tie it in with the Dark Apostle and also with Abaddon's cloak. That's another colour that I'm trying to continue across the whole army. It also means it separates the colour from the black of the armour. So the banners and cloaks will be a little bit lighter. The final colour that we're going to apply as a base coat is Vallejo Model Air Chrome, and this is just to do the little part of the shaft of the chain glaive. There's a little piece at the bottom here and one piece at the top. We're just going to do that a little bit silver so that it makes it look a little bit different to the mechanical arms, the tendrils that are growing out of his backpack. Like so. Now we're going to be using Citadel Nuln Oil, the first of the shades. That's going to be to go over the German Grey at the top and also all the silvery metallics. Like so. The next one is Citadel Agrax Earthshade. Now using this for all of the gold, and we're also using this for his shawl and his hood, just to give it a darker browny kind of colour. Works pretty well, and looks quite cool once it's dried as well. Good thing about the shades as well, they also knock off a little bit of the shine, so when that dries it's dulled down the shine that's on that cad red colour. The next shade is going to be Citadel Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to use this to do all of the bone on a model. Now there isn't too much, but if you spot any as you're going along, just again paint up with the Rakarth flesh and add the Seraphim Sepia. Next up we're going to be using Citadel Reichland Flesh Shade. This is just the flesh around his eyes and also the flesh on this strange eye at the top here. Now using a little bit of Druchii Violet, this is just to do the tassel of hair on his chain glaive. like so. Use the brush to absorb if there's too much on there. Now we're going to be applying the base colours again, starting with Citadel Retributor Armour. As always, when you're doing the base colours and putting them back on, try and get that little bit of shading and lighting effect on it. I always try and leave, if there's any areas that wouldn't catch any light, I always leave those a little bit more shaded, so don't apply too much of the base colours to those. If there's a top edge, make sure you get it on there. Next colour we're going to use is Citadel Liberator Gold, so we're going to do the highlights on the sections we've just done, and also we're going to do the first base colour back onto all the armour trim. We'll have all this finished when we come back. Now just going to add a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome to the Liberator Gold. This is going to be to highlight all of the gold. So all the bits that we started with Retributor Armour and all the bits we started with Liberator Gold, we're going to highlight with this colour. Now because the chrome gives it a nice shine, you want to be catching all of the top edges with this, and also some of the flatter surfaces that will be catching a lot of the light, just to give them a really good shine. Now we're going to reapply the Citadel Leadbelcher. We're going to get all the tendrils and all the little metallic tubes and things like that, so they've got a shine to them as well. Not sure what it is about that skull on his waist there, but that comes up really, really nice with the metallics. So by the end of it, it's quite gleaming. With the Leadbelcher finished, we're moving on to Citadel Fulgurite Copper. And again, that's just to add a little bit more colour to the back end there. Now where you've got the shade pooled at the bottom, you just want to sort of gently edge in the Fulgurite Copper so you're not getting a flat edge where the Fulgurite Copper meets the shade. A little bit off camera there, sorry. Like so. Next up is Citadel Liberator Gold, and we're just going to use a tiny little bit of this to highlight the Fulgurite Copper. Just going to be doing the very, very tip of this, and also the edges around the groove. There's one on the other side too. Now we're going to be reapplying the Rakarth flesh. Going to apply this to all of the bones, all of the little claws that seem to be growing from them. And also, what I failed to do on this video is apply it back to the straps around the holster at his hip. So when you're applying the colours to the skulls, and the bones and the spikes, if you apply those to the little straps going around his holster too, because you'll probably notice towards the end that I haven't done that. I'll do that after the video's finished. Now we're going to be reapplying the Vallejo flesh base. I'm just going to apply this to the eye here, and also his eyelids in his mask. Now to do the bits within the mask, I use the Army Painter Wargamer character brush. At the moment I'm using a Citadel medium layer brush to paint this part. Now we're just going to add some white to the Vallejo flesh base. We're just going to do a highlight on his eyelids in there, and also on the eye on his shoulder. You can only really see his bottom eyelid inside the mask, but that's fine because the mask will create shade on the top of his eye. Now we're just adding a little bit more white to the previous mix, and we're going to add another highlight to the flesh part. Like so. And finally we're going to add a little bit of white to the model, so we can do the eye on his shoulder and the eyes within the mask too. A little bit off camera there, sorry about that. Like so. Now all we're doing here is using some black. I'm using Vallejo Black because that's the one I tend to use, my go-to black. And all we're going to do is add the pupils to the eye on his shoulder and also the eyes within his mask. Like so. Now we're going back to Burnt Cad Red from Vallejo. This is to reapply the base colour to his cloak, or to his shawl and his hood. You'll notice this is a lot duller than previous layers because it's been really shaken up for this. And once we start adding the white to it to make the highlights, it'll be a lot duller again, as the white is a really matte colour. When we come back, we'll have this colour all finished off. Now we're just going to add a little bit of white to the Burnt Cad Red and start applying the highlights to his cloak. Now while we're doing this, you want to be trying to get the upper edges where it's more likely to catch the light, making sure that you're leaving some of the Burnt Cad Red showing and also some of the shade in the recesses. I haven't added too much white for this because I didn't want to highlight it and make it too bright, because I do want the colours to be quite muted and drab, like an old dirty Mechanicus cloak. Now we're going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix, and then add another layer of highlights to his shawl and his hood. Again, we're trying to get it so the light will be catching the top edges of things. So it's the top edges of his cloak that you want to be applying more highlights to. Like so. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Mephiston Red. It's just to reapply the colour to the tassel hanging off his chain glaive. Like so. Next up, we're adding some Citadel Fire Dragon Bright to the Mephiston Red. I'm going to do the first layer of highlights for this. Now we're just going to add a little bit more Citadel Fire Dragon Bright to the previous mix, and add another layer of highlights to the tassel. Like so. Now we're going to reapply the Vallejo Burnt Umber. When you're doing this, you want to leave some of the shades within it, so you want to try and highlight the areas that catch more light. Sometimes it's not always possible to do, like I found the rains quite difficult because they're quite flat surfaces. I didn't want to leave them all just one flat colour, so I have left probably more shade on there than would otherwise be there. And when we come back, we'll have all the burnt umber finished. Now I've just added some Citadel Mournfang Brown to give it a more leathery colour. We're just going to highlight the reins and also the leather grip on his chain glaive. At the moment we're leaving the trophy spikes at the back because we're going to be doing them a different brown colour. So it is just the reins and the chain glaive that we're working on at the moment. We're going to be adding some Vallejo Beige Brown, one of the Flames of War colours, to Burnt Umber, and now we're going to be highlighting the trophy spikes. Now you could do these if you wanted to as really rusted metal, so they've been there for a while, but for some reason I thought they'd look quite nice as wood, make a bit of a change. Also doing this colour on the pouch on his leg as well, just to make that a little bit different from the shaft of the chain glaive. Now we're going to add a little bit more beige brown to that previous mix, just do one final highlight on the trophy spikes. Like so. Now we're going to use a little bit of Seraphim Sepia just to paint his face mask. Doing a slightly different colour to the rest of the bone so it stands out more. Now we're going to use some Citadel Casandora yellow, and that was just to paint the little recess in the chain glaive. Now the video cocked up for that one, so I've just added that to the start of this one. Now we're going to be using Citadel Fuegan orange to work on the bottom of the recess, so that we can try and work in the fire effect that has been on quite a few of the Black Legion models so far. Like so. Next up, we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo White and finish off his face mask. Now this is slightly out of order here because I'd stopped for the evening, come back to carry on doing the shades and realised that I hadn't finished the face mask the night before. So I've gone back to do this now just using Vallejo White. Make that stand out a bit better. Next up is Citadel Carroberg Crimson. We're going back to the chain glaive. We're just going to add this to the very bottom part of it, just to give that a nice fiery effect there. Now we're starting to get all the bulk colours down now. We're going to start working on the black of his armour. So we're going to start by painting this with Vallejo Black, working on the top part of the chain glaive here, making sure the edges have got all the black on as well. And then we're going to do the same on all the main parts of his armour as well. Now for me, this is where the model starts coming together, because prior to this it looks really untidy, but when you put the black layer back on, it really does make the model stand out a lot better. It looks a lot tidier, a lot neater. It looks a lot more finished as well. Now it's going to be Vallejo German Grey, and that is to highlight his armour and also reapply the colour back to his banner. Now you want to make sure you leave plenty of Nuln Oil in the recesses on the banner, because there's quite a lot of creases and things like that on it, so you can highlight those, make it look pretty good. And it's pretty easy to do as well, because the creases are really well made in the plastics now. Next we've added a little bit of Mechanicus standard grey to the German grey. I'm going to do a few little highlights on the armour. We're also going to highlight the banner on his back as well. Like so. I've added a little bit more Mechanicus standard grey from Citadel. I'm going to do another highlight on the banner pole. I'm going to do around the edges of all the little tears and the rips, and the raised edges and creases on the banner itself. This just brings them out, makes them stand out a bit better. Once we've got this back banner highlighted, we're going to start doing a little bit of freehand with the white to get the pattern on it. Just going to be using Vallejo White. We're going to be doing the Eye of Horus with the slight Mechanicus cog above it. Now I'm using the Citadel medium layer brush here. I don't mind starting off with this because they still have a pretty good point on them to do finer details like this. So I'll work on the basic shape of it, and then once you've finished you can go back with the Wargamer character brush and just tidy that up. I find if I do all of it with the thinner brush, it takes ages and it makes more mistakes at the end of the day, for me anyway. So use the thicker brush to start with, then tidy it up with the thinner brush. Now we're going to use just a little bit of Carroberg Crimson, before I forget, just to go around the edge of the targeting eye there. If you heard that, that was my cat. Next we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome as well, just to put some edges on the chain glaive, and also on the little blades on his weapons, and on one of the mechanical tendrils as well. Going back to the banner now, we're going to use Citadel Casandora Yellow Shade. We're just going to colour in the whole of the white emblem with this colour. Get that so it's all one nice smooth layer. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of Fuegan Orange from Citadel. Now if you look at the official model from Games Workshop that they've painted it, there's little hints of orange in the banner, but not enough that it's a really deep visible orange. So you want to be putting on a really tiny bit of this just to discolour the yellow, but nothing too much. Then we're going to darken that up next. Like so. The final colour that we're going to use is Citadel Agrax Earthshade, and that is just going to be to darken up his banner. So we're going to put on a decent layer of Agrax Earthshade onto this, just to darken it and dirty it, so it's not bright orange and it's not bright yellow. It's more of a dirty yellowy orange colour, like so. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.